Hi, listeners. Just a reminder that all parties mentioned in this episode are innocent until proven guilty. Any opinions given belong to the hosts of Hoosier Case File. Any ads heard during this episode that are not in our voice are placed by third-party agencies. They should not be considered the opinion of or to be endorsed by Hoosier Case File. Welcome to Hoosier Case File, a podcast that delves into Indiana true crime cases. I'm Mary Quigley.
And I'm Rebecca Wilhelm.
We will be your guides into the tales that have baffled law enforcement and left communities in suspense.
From tranquil cornfields to bustling city streets, Indiana holds untold stories of crime and mystery. Join us as we navigate through the pages of the Hoosier Case File and bring you the stories that have long lingered in the shadows of the Hoosier State.
In each episode, we'll take you on a journey through the cases that continue to puzzle even the most seasoned investigators.
We will discuss the evidence, look at the leads, and invite you along as we speculate on possibilities surrounding these cases.
We will also shine a light on the solved crimes where justice prevailed and the pieces of the puzzle finally came together.
So true crime fans, come along with us as we pursue truth, both in the unsolved and the triumphs of justice.
Grab your cup of coffee as we navigate through the twists and turns of the Hoosier Case File.
Let the investigations begin. The story we have for you today has been regarded by many people to be one of the worst cases of child abuse in Indiana history. Yes, the 1965 torture and murder of 16-year-old Sylvia Likens shocked the state and even the nation back then. The case is still shocking to this day.
The details of this case are very disturbing.
I agree, Mary. This story is much more unsettling than other cases of child neglect and murder.
I've thought about what it is that sets this horrible story apart from other cases, and I think what it is for me is that it was not just the adult who did the abuse.
That's exactly what upsets me so much about this case. It was not just the caregiver, but other children who participated in the abuse.
Sylvia's caregiver, Gertrude Benezuski, was able to get her own children and other children from the neighborhood to participate in torturing Sylvia. Some only watched it happen.
The abuse apparently went on for weeks. Not one of these children told their parents what was going on either.
There were even adults who, in the weeks and months before Sylvia's death, came to the Benezuski home and saw Sylvia. Not one of these adults ever came forward.
And there were opportunities for Sylvia and her sister Jenny to tell someone as well. And they could have told a teacher. They even had family living nearby. But sadly, neither of these girls believed anything would be done to help them.
Let's go ahead and get into this case.
Our story begins on October the 26th, 1965 in Indianapolis, Indiana, where police are called to a home at 3850 East New York Street, where a body of a teenage girl was found lying on a mattress.
The girl was 16-year-old Sylvia Likens. The girl's caregiver, Gertrude Benezuski, told police that Sylvia had been attacked by some boys. Then she hands officers a note written by Sylvia that seems to confirm the story.
However, police take one look at Sylvia's body and know something does not add up.
The first thing that seems off is that it's clear that Sylvia has been mistreated. She is severely underweight. The wounds on her body look old to the officers. They just know that what they are looking at didn't just happen.
Now, according to a December 3rd, 2019 Indy Star article titled The 1965 Torture and Murder of Sylvia Likens, written by Dawn Mitchell, Sylvia had, quote, been branded in one spot by a hot metal object, and the words, "I am a prostitute," had been etched on her stomach.
Let's back up a little and discuss how Sylvia even came to live in Gertrude's home. Sylvia came from a very poor family.
Sadly, yes. Her father made a living just working any jobs that he could, like odd jobs. And he had even worked for the carnival. And in 1965, he and his wife decided to join up with the carnival again in order to make money. What this meant is that the Likens needed to find somewhere for their 4 children.
According to Dawn Mitchell's Indy Star article, they had an older sister who was married and 2 brothers who went to stay with grandparents. This left Sylvia and her younger sister Jenny without a place to go.
Which I hate to say this, Mary, and I'm not one to blame. I guess I do not understand this.
I don't either. There were 8 of us grandkids, and there were many times Grandma just had about all 8 of us, if not a few of us staying with her at various times as kids.
Oh, I know what you mean, especially the summertime. It seemed like, we were always with grandma.
It's one of those make it make sense moments.
I agree with you. And the only thing that I can possibly think of is maybe the grandparents couldn't financially care for 4 children at one time.
That is a possibility.
We probably won't ever know the reason that they couldn't take all 4 kids. Sources say that the Likens were introduced to Gertrude Baniszewski, and she agreed to watch these 2 girls for $20 a week. And that's a decision that would prove to be terrible.
Now, what is interesting is that Gertrude already had a house full.
She sure did. Several other sources say that she already had 7 children in her care when she agreed to take on Jenny and Sylvia Likens.
Apparently, right from the start, Sylvia and Gertrude's 17-year-old daughter, Paula, did not get along at all.
No, these 2 girls did not get off to a good start. And apparently that's what started a dislike for Sylvia.
Then when the Likens did not send the $20 as promised, Gertrude took the girls upstairs and slapped them.
Yes, and that Indy Star article also has a quote from Jenny's testimony at trial. Jenny's on record as saying, quote, "Gertrude took us upstairs and she slapped me and said, 'Well, I took care of you 2, B words, for a week for nothing,' end quote."
That's really crazy.
It really is. And what I find even sadder is that apparently the money ended up coming in the very next day. It was just late in the mail.
So Gertrude had a couple of different tools to use on the girls. One was a paddle that many sources described as a large wooden paddle. The other weapon of choice was a big leather belt that her ex-husband had left behind.
So Gertrude's ex was an Indianapolis police officer. So this belt that she used was one of those very thick duty belts.
She would also use matches to burn the girls.
And what is horrible is that she would invite her own children and neighborhood kids to participate in the abuse. And both of the girls, the Likens girls, were abused. But unfortunately, at some point over the months of July to October of 1965, Sylvia became the main target of the abuse.
It is extremely disturbing as some of these older kids began putting cigarettes out on Sylvia and participating in kicking and beating her.
And listeners, this part is a little bit, very disturbing. At some point during the abuse, Sylvia was forced to undress, and they actually used a Coke bottle and inserted it inside of her. And she was also forced into a very hot bath. And Gertrude apparently told her that it was to, quote, cleanse her from her sins. She was locked in a basement, only given crackers to eat. And it ended up coming out during the trial that Gertrude was actually the one who had etched those words into Sylvia's stomach. And shockingly, a neighbor boy named Richard Hobbs had finished these words that were carved.
That's really horrible.
It is. I cannot even imagine what this little girl endured.
We will be back after a short break. We're back. Becky, the more we discuss and go through articles, the more disturbing this case gets.
The craziest thing to me is that once Gertrude realizes, that they had maybe gone too far with this abuse and Sylvia was not going to survive, she gets Sylvia to write a note.
At one point, Sylvia tried to get out of the basement, but was weak and unsuccessful. One of Gertrude's sons blocked her from leaving, and she was forced back into the basement, where she died from her injuries on October 26, 1965.
And then when they investigated the cause of death for Sylvia, these injuries were very, very extensive.
She had brain swelling and a brain hemorrhage. The coroner counted over 100 cigarette burns on her body. She was malnourished, extremely underweight, and the skin damage had caused her to go into shock.
Sylvia was laid to rest at Oak Hill Cemetery in Lebanon, Indiana.
So Gertrude Benezuski's trial began in May of 1966. And she, of course, tried to deny that she had known about the torture or that it was even going on.
Thankfully, the jury saw through this, and on May 19th, 1966, an Indiana jury found her guilty. Gertrude was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life.
Now, her daughter Paula was also convicted, and she is convicted and charged with second-degree murder and also received a life sentence.
The neighbor boys, Richard Hobbs and Coy Hubbard, along with Gertrude's son John, were charged with manslaughter. The boys were sentenced to 21 years in the Indiana State Reformatory in Pendleton.
But if you thought it was over, it was not. And this is the part that's frustrating. Here we go. Get ready.
According to the Indy Star article, Gertrude was granted a retrial in 1971, where she was found guilty once again.
Now, during this trial, her daughter Paula was able to plead down to a lesser charge of manslaughter, and she was released after 2 years. Paula ended up getting married when she got out of jail and moved to a farm in Iowa.
The boys were paroled in 1968. Gertrude's son John actually ended up becoming a minister down in Texas.
Now, the neighbor boy who helped carve those words into Sylvia's stomach, Richard Hobbs, ended up passing away from cancer, and he was 21 years old.
According to the Indy Star article, Coy Hubbard ended up having what was described as several brushes with the law.
Now, I find that interesting.
Somehow in 1985, word on the street was that Gertrude was up for parole. And listeners, according to the murderpedia.org article about her, the people in Indiana were not happy about her being paroled.
No, they were not. And according to the murderpedia.org, the Likens family started speaking out against the parole.
Which is understandable.
Yeah, the Likens family spoke out any chance they got. And this helped them get the attention of two very well-known national anti-crime groups, Protect the Innocent and Society's League Against Molestation.
Both of these organizations made the trip to Indiana and started what murderpedia.org calls a sidewalk picket to protest the release of Gertrude Benezuski.
And these groups were able to get over 4,500 signatures against this parole.
However, Indiana did not listen, and she was released in December of 1985.
Which is just unreal to me.
Yep, she changed her name and moved to Iowa, passing from lung cancer in 1990.
This case is just so distressing to me.
It really is.
I mean, there's other cases of child abuse out there, and all of them are unsettling, but this particular one I find especially horrible.
I agree. I've been thinking about this since we started reading up on it.
And I have too. And I think that one of the major things that's upsetting is the participation of the kids in this abuse. There were neighborhood kids who did not participate in any abuse, but they witnessed it and they didn't tell their parents what they saw going on.
I think that's one of the major reasons this story has haunted Indiana for the past 59 years.
I also think that if you think about it, there was adults who even saw Sylvia was underweight and not one of them spoke up.
Sylvia's sister Jenny, who also endured abuse at the hands of Gertrude Benezuski, passed away in 2004. She was only 54 years old.
So I've been thinking about why in the world this case still matters today, 59 years after the fact. Most of the people involved in this case are long dead or older now.
Well, I believe it matters so much because this tale serves as a warning.
You know, there is that saying, see something, say something. And I think this particular case really drives home the fact that even if just one person had spoke up, Sylvia would not have died.
That's very true. I also think it serves as a warning to parents to really take a close look at who you are leaving your children with.
Yes, the murderpedia.org, as well as other articles that we read, make the claim that the Likens, they did not actually go into the home to see how Gertrude kept her home.
That's disturbing to me, and I try really hard not to put blame on anyone.
And I feel the same way because, you know, the Likens, they were very poor. They were desperate because they needed to leave with the carnival for work to provide for their family. And I believe they just were out of options.
Yes, I don't think for a minute they thought that Gertrude would hurt their daughters, let alone kill one of them.
I just wish that they had gone into the house because it is pretty shocking what condition the Baniszewski home was in.
All of the articles I've read say that there was no stove in the home.
That's correct. There were also not enough beds for the people living there to sleep in.
Gertrude also only kept bread and crackers and no other food.
She also was not a housekeeper. This house was very, very dirty.
I can't believe that after seeing this, you would leave your children with this woman.
I agree. I just wish that Mr. and Mrs. Likens had actually entered the home and had took a look around.
Cases like this also disturb me because I don't understand it.
I don't either.
I mean, you can kind of understand a heat of the moment incident. It is in no way an excuse, but you can understand it.
And I get what you're saying, and I think you're right.
This, though, there is no excuse.
So we'll be back next time with a missing person case from Madison, Indiana.
Daniel Reeves has been missing since 2008.
And hopefully in our next episode, it'll help jog someone's memory and we can help bring Daniel home to his family.
What do you think about the case of Sylvia Likens? Is there a detail we missed? We would love to hear from you. Please send us an email to HoosierCaseFile@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. We may use it in a later episode. In the email, let us know if you wish to remain anonymous.
To see our source material, please visit our website, www.HoosierCaseFile.com. Please find us and follow us on Facebook or on Instagram. Hoosier Case File is a Quigley Productions podcast.
Our theme song was written and recorded by Earl G. Wilhelm.
Stay safe, everyone.